The sudden eruption of light from the Zarnak ships felt like a cosmic explosion. Earth had barely time to register the threat before massive explosions rocked the surface, ripping through military bases, cities, and spaceports. The first strike came like a hammer, and no one could deny its force. The Zarnak fleet, vast and menacing, hovered over Earth, their ship designs sleek, insectoid, and unfathomably advanced. Their weapons unleashed waves of destructive energy that tore through Earth's defenses like paper. Across the planet, chaos reigned. Air raid sirens screamed in every major city, warning civilians to take cover. But there was no escape from the wrath of the Zarnak. Global defense systems had been obliterated in the first strike, and the planet's military was nowhere near ready to face this kind of invasion. Earth's forces had been used to skirmishes, peacekeeping missions, and border patrols, but never a full-scale galactic war. The first shock came in the form of the Void Caller, a Zarnak battleship the size of a small moon. It positioned itself above Earth's largest city, New York, and released a cascade of deadly energy beams, leveling skyscrapers and cutting swaths through the streets below. Thousands perished in minutes. Military commanders scrambled to retaliate, but the Zarnak ships were too powerful, too swift. Earth's most advanced fighters couldn't even come close to touching them. Every attempt to fight back was met with an annihilating counterattack. At the United Nations Emergency Summit, world leaders convened in a panic. Fear swept through the room like a contagion. The world had never seen a threat like this, and it seemed clear that humanity was on the brink of extinction. Satellites had confirmed that the Zarnak forces were systematically targeting Earth's infrastructure, disabling power grids, and creating utter chaos. What few military leaders and strategists managed to survive the initial waves proposed a simple, desperate strategy. Earth had to buy time. But buying time came with a deadly price. The invasion was swift and brutal. Zarnak troops dropped onto Earth's surface, quickly occupying the most strategic regions. Cities were reduced to rubble as Earth's forces mounted a meager defense, scrambling to gather any remaining weapons, technology, and soldiers who could fight back. In the midst of this chaos, a single voice rose above the panic. The President of the United States, though visibly shaken, issued an emergency broadcast to the world. The message was direct, cold, and filled with a resolve no one had expected. "We are not alone in this fight," she said, her voice carrying across every network, her face projected in every home. "The Zarnak will not claim this world. We will stand, we will fight, and we will build something that will change the course of this war." At the same time, the world's scientific and military communities had already begun work in secret. Earth's brightest minds, engineers, researchers, and military experts, were working in unison on an emergency project to create a new weapon, one that could stand up to the might of the Zarnak. In the heart of a covered underground facility, a new type of ship was taking shape, one that had the potential to turn the tide of battle. In those first days of invasion, as Earth burned, a singular question echoed across the planet. What would humanity become in the face of annihilation? And the answer: it would not be a people who fell to their knees in defeat. The world would rise, and it would build the force that would strike terror into the galaxy. Something new was taking form, something as old as the planet itself, something dragon-like. In the aftermath of the initial onslaught, Earth's leaders realized they had no choice but to change the rules of warfare entirely. Conventional weapons would never be enough to hold off the Zarnak collective. They needed something that could fight fire with fire, something powerful enough to confront the enemy at their level and beyond. The idea of creating a new class of warships took root. Months passed in secrecy. Earth's brightest minds were enlisted to design a ship that could match the Zarnak's technological supremacy. The project was codenamed Dragon, a fitting tribute to Earth's ancient myths, where the mighty dragon was both feared and revered. The Dragon-class ships would be Earth's new defense, powerful, versatile, and adaptive. The engineers, scientists, and military tacticians knew that creating such a weapon was no small feat. The design had to be something that could evolve, something unpredictable, something that could outsmart the enemy. The Dragon-class ships were not just ships. They were living machines, a hybrid of cutting-edge technology and biological systems that had never been tested before. The idea was to create an adaptive warship, one that could learn from battle and adjust its tactics in real time. Artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and nanotechnology were integrated into every aspect of the ship's design, making them capable of transforming mid-fight, recalibrating their weapon systems, shields, and maneuverability in ways that no other ship in the galaxy could. As the designs were drawn up, the scale of the project became clear. The ships were to be colossal, the size of a small city, with vast hulls reinforced with newly discovered materials that could withstand the destructive energy of Zarnak weaponry. Every ship would be equipped with the most advanced energy shields, capable of absorbing and redirecting enemy fire. But perhaps the most revolutionary element was the neural interface, a direct connection between the pilot and the ship. The pilots, chosen from Earth's most elite and fearless, would become one with the ship. Their thoughts, instincts, and actions would be synchronized with the ship's artificial intelligence. They would experience the battle not as separate entities, but as a single force. It was an unprecedented innovation, one that would change the very nature of warfare. The first Dragon-class ship, the Wrath of Gaia, was completed after nearly a year of intense work. The crew, comprising both military leaders and top-tier engineers, watched in awe as the massive warship powered up for its first test flight. The ship was magnificent, its hull gleaming with iridescent alloys, its weapon systems humming with barely contained power. As the ship's engines ignited, sending a pulse of energy through the surrounding area, it became clear that the Dragon was more than just a ship. It was a new force in the galaxy. The first test flight took place under the watchful eyes of Earth's highest officials. The ship blasted through Earth's atmosphere with a force that shattered the skies. But it was not just its sheer power that astonished everyone. It was the way it moved. Unlike the lumbering, predictable ships of the past, the Wrath of Gaia twisted and turned with an eerie fluidity, dodging incoming fire as if it were alive. The neural interface between the pilot and ship seemed to transcend human limitations. It was as if the ship was responding to thoughts before they were fully formed in the pilot's mind. Despite its success, there were still many questions. The technology was untested in real combat, and the risks were enormous. Could Earth's fleet of Dragon-class ships survive an actual engagement with the Zarnak? Could they adapt to the relentless onslaught of the invaders? And perhaps most haunting of all, could the pilots truly form a bond with the machines they were destined to command? But the clock was ticking. Earth's defenses were crumbling under the Zarnak's relentless assault, and there was no turning back. The decision was made. The Dragon-class ships would take to space. As the Wrath of Gaia and its sister ships prepared for battle, one question loomed over the human race. Would the Dragon rise to meet its destiny, or would Earth be consumed by the Zarnak flames? The answer would come soon, and it would shake the very foundation of the galaxy. The moment of truth arrived with Earth holding its breath. The newly completed fleet of Dragon-class ships, the Wrath of Gaia among them, was ready to face the Zarnak threat. The stakes couldn't have been higher. The Zarnak, having decimated Earth's cities and military bases, were already advancing to take full control of the planet. Time was running out. Earth's final hope rested on a new, untested force, ships capable of shaking the very fabric of galactic warfare. With the launch of the Dragon-class fleet, Earth's military commanders and pilots took their positions. The battle began not with a grand announcement, but with a simple, profound message across the fleet's comms. For Earth, for humanity. The Wrath of Gaia, led by Commander Elise Ward, was the flagship of this fledgling armada. Its crew consisted of the finest minds humanity had to offer, but it was its neural network, the bond between the ship and its pilot, that truly set it apart. Ward, a seasoned fighter pilot, had been chosen for her unparalleled instincts, but even she felt a sense of awe at the ship's response to her thoughts, the way it seemed to anticipate her actions as if it were a part of her. The power, the sheer potential of the Dragon-class ships was intoxicating. The battle began at the edge of Earth's orbit. Zarnak ships, massive and intimidating, filled the void, their dark shapes blotting out the stars. Their fleet, which had once seemed invincible, now faced something they could not comprehend. Ships that fought as a single unit, a collective mind shared between human pilots and their machines. Earth's fleet, a patchwork of Dragon-class ships, launched into battle with a speed and precision that took the Zarnak completely by surprise. The first engagement was chaotic, a brutal collision of firepower and sheer will. Zarnak warships fired powerful energy blasts, turning the space around them into a field of deadly light. Earth's fleet, though outnumbered, retaliated with astonishing agility. The wrath of Gaia moved like a shadow, avoiding energy blasts and striking back with precision, its advanced weapon systems tearing through Zarnak shields with ease. The pilot's thoughts aligned with the ship's movements, a seamless dance between man and machine. Ward, barely a second ahead of the ship's AI, led the charge. As the Zarnak fired their devastating energy cannons, she instructed the wrath of Gaia to deploy a magnetic field that deflected the attack, a move so unexpected that the Zarnak fleet hesitated, unsure of how to counteract. Ward had anticipated this tactic, but what shocked her most was the ease with which the ship adjusted to her command. It felt as if the ship was thinking for her, as though it had become an extension of her body, a shared consciousness in the chaos of war. The battle raged on. Earth's ships hit hard, exploiting weaknesses in the Zarnak formation. But as the wrath of Gaia took down one Zarnak destroyer, another would appear to take its place, their numbers overwhelming. The Zarnak were not without their own tricks. Their advanced communication technology allowed them to adapt quickly, and they soon began using a new strategy: coordinated strikes, designed to target and overwhelm individual ships. The tide began to turn. Zarnak capital ships began launching missile barrages, intending to cripple the Dragon-class fleet before it could pose a serious threat. The wrath of Gaia was hit. Once, twice. But each time, its adaptive shields absorbed the blasts. The damage, however, was becoming significant. The Zarnak were relentless. It was at that moment that Ward made a decision that would define her leadership. Recognizing the risk of being overwhelmed, she initiated a tactical retreat, pulling back to regroup with the rest of the fleet. As the Dragon-class ships shifted into evasive formations, the Zarnak pursued, unwilling to let their prey escape. But the humans had one advantage the Zarnak didn't: unpredictability. Suddenly, the Dragon-class fleet reappeared in a new formation, executing a rapid flanking maneuver. Ward barked orders, and the fleet dove into an aggressive counterattack. This time, instead of waiting for the Zarnak to adapt, Earth's ships used their newfound tactics, shifting formations, using energy bursts to disrupt Zarnak communications, and hitting hard in places the enemy didn't expect. In the chaos of battle, the tide began to shift. The Zarnak's once confident fleet faltered as the wrath of Gaia and its sister ships tore through their lines. One by one, Zarnak ships fell, and a sense of hope stirred among the human fleet. As the final Zarnak ship limped into the void, the fleet breathed a collective sigh of relief. The battle was far from won, but for the first time, Earth's forces had proven that they could go toe-to-toe with the invaders. Commander Ward, her heart still racing from the adrenaline of battle, stared at the wreckage of the Zarnak fleet. This was only the beginning, she thought. But with the Dragon-class ships at their side, humanity had taken its first step toward reclaiming the stars. The fight was far from over, but Earth's fleet had found its backbone. The Dragon had risen. The victory against the Zarnak fleet was short-lived. Earth's Dragon-class ships had proven their potential, but the war had only just begun. The Zarnak Collective, humiliated by their defeat, regrouped with a vengeance. Earth's forces, emboldened by their first major success, braced for what was sure to come, a Zarnak counterattack that would be unlike anything they had faced before. For days, the skies were silent, as if the galaxy itself held its breath. But Earth's leaders knew the Zarnak would not rest for long. They had underestimated the ferocity of humanity's will, and they would now seek to crush it completely. And so, as the days turned into weeks, the Zarnak assembled their reinforcements in the deepest reaches of space, far from Earth's gaze. Earth's military leaders, eager to prepare for the inevitable retaliation, worked tirelessly to refine the Dragon-class ships and increase their numbers. But in the back of their minds, a single question lingered. Would their victory against the Zarnak fleet be enough to ensure their survival? Then, the silence was broken. Without warning, a new, massive Zarnak warship, the Leviathan, emerged from the darkness. Its sheer size was staggering, larger than any ship Earth had ever seen, dwarfing even the largest Dragon-class ship. The Leviathan was a behemoth of destruction, its hull bristling with weapons capable of leveling entire fleets. The Zarnak had thrown everything into this one final assault, and they had arrived with overwhelming firepower. Earth's military command scrambled into action. The Dragon-class ships, already spread across multiple sectors, were quickly mobilized to intercept the incoming threat. But there was no mistaking the scale of the challenge they faced. The Zarnak's new flagship was a fortress of unimaginable power, designed to crush Earth's newfound resistance with ease. Commander Ward, aboard the Wrath of Gaia, observed the approaching dreadnought from the command deck, her eyes scanning the vast void. She knew that this battle would be unlike any other. The Zarnak fleet wasn't just coming to conquer, they were coming to annihilate. The enemy's fleet was far larger than Earth's, and the firepower of the Leviathan was beyond anything the Dragon-class ships had ever faced. "Prepare for impact," Ward said, her voice steady despite the tension mounting in the command room. Her crew, now battle-hardened and resolute, responded in unison. But even they could feel the weight of what was coming. The Leviathan was capable of wiping out their entire fleet in a single strike. The first volley of attacks came in an explosion of light. The Leviathan's weapons unleashed a barrage of plasma bolts, each one capable of turning a Dragon-class ship into a heap of molten metal. The human fleet moved with precision, dodging and weaving to avoid the incoming fire. But it wasn't enough. One ship, the Fury of Sol, took a direct hit and exploded in a flash, sending debris scattering across the void. Ward's breath caught in her chest as she watched the devastation unfold. The Zarnak were relentless, and they were not giving Earth a second chance. But there was no time for hesitation. Ward knew they had only one chance to survive. She ordered the Wrath of Gaia to lead a daring strike against the Leviathan's engines, hoping to cripple its movement and buy them some time. The battle turned into a brutal game of cat and mouse as Earth's ships danced around the Zarnak flagship, launching harrowing strikes while avoiding the deadly counterfire. The Dragon-class ships were fast, their advanced agility allowing them to outmaneuver the Zarnak's lumbering weapons. But every time they scored a hit, the Zarnak retaliated with twice the fury. Commander Ward, her pulse quickening, watched as the Wrath of Gaia neared the Leviathan. Their weapons clashed in a dazzling display of light and energy, and Ward's heart raced as the ship's AI guided her through evasive maneuvers. But as the Wrath of Gaia struck a blow to the Leviathan's hull, a new threat appeared. The Zarnak flagship unleashed a wave of energy pulses, destabilizing Earth's shields and forcing the fleet into a temporary retreat. The Zarnak were relentless, and their weapons were devastating. The Wrath of Gaia was battered, but it was far from defeated. Ward's mind raced. Earth's Dragon-class ships couldn't keep evading forever. They had to find a way to exploit a weakness, any weakness, in the Zarnak's defenses. In a moment of inspiration, Ward realized that the Zarnak were too focused on brute force. The Leviathan's sheer size and power made it vulnerable to precise, concentrated strikes. She called for a coordinated assault on the flagship's central command core. The fleet's remaining ships would use their agility to distract the Leviathan, while the Dragon-class ships would unleash everything they had on the command center. The Dragon fleet reassembled, attacking with newfound precision. They began to target the weak points of the Leviathan, its communication arrays, its engine vents, and its weapons caches. The Wrath of Gaia led the charge, dodging fire and weaving through enemy ships as Ward's crew pushed the ship to its limits. But just as it seemed the tide might turn, a chilling message came through the comms. Reinforcements are coming. Another Zarnak fleet, far larger and more formidable, was on the way. This battle was far from over, and Earth's survival depended on their ability to overcome the Leviathan. Before the true storm arrived, the war had only just begun, and the galaxy's most feared force was about to face its greatest challenge yet. As Ward watched the growing menace of the Leviathan, she felt a heavy weight settle in her chest. The Zarnak fleet was relentless, and their reinforcements, massive and formidable, were rapidly approaching from hyperspace. Time was no longer a luxury. It was running out. Earth's Dragon-class fleet was battered, but they still had the one advantage they'd fought so hard to achieve: their adaptability. The Leviathan's command core is vulnerable, Ward said, her voice cutting through the tense atmosphere of the Wrath of Gaia's command deck. But we need to hit it now, or we're done for. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Kendra Shaw, worked quickly at her console, analyzing the data coming in from the fleet's sensors. Commander, we got exactly one shot at this. If we don't breach the core's shields in the next 30 minutes, we'll be overrun. Ward's mind raced as the thought of failure flickered through her mind, but she quickly suppressed it. The Zarnak were no longer just a threat to Earth. They were a threat to humanity itself. She had led her crew into battle time and time again, and there was no turning back now. Earth's survival rested on the Dragon-class ships, on their ability to adapt, to strike with precision, and most importantly, to outsmart the Zarnak. We do this together, Ward said, speaking to her crew and the commanders of the other Dragon ships through the comms. All ships, prepare for a concentrated strike on the Leviathan's central core. We strike now, or we don't strike at all. Her words were met with silence, but not of fear. It was the silence of understanding. Earth's forces, once ragtag and scattered, had become a formidable fighting force, bound together by their shared survival instinct. The time for hesitation was over. The fleet began to position themselves, with the Wrath of Gaia taking the lead. Ward knew that while their ships had been designed to be adaptable, the Zarnak had not counted on the ingenuity of the humans. It wasn't just the sheer power of their weapons, but the ability to change the flow of battle in the blink of an eye. That was their greatest weapon. The Zarnak fleet, distracted by the havoc the Dragon-class ships had already wreaked, did not expect Earth's fleet to regroup so quickly. They underestimated the humans' willingness to sacrifice everything for the chance to survive. As the Dragon ships swooped in, they became more than ships. They were a swarm, an unpredictable force that struck from multiple angles, confusing the Zarnak fleet and forcing them into disarray. Commander Ward took a deep breath, her hand steady on the controls. Now, Lieutenant Shaw. Fire on my mark. The seconds stretched as Shaw worked in tandem with the Wrath of Gaia's neural interface, analyzing the weak points of the Leviathan. The ship's advanced systems sent a pulse of energy directly to the target area, while the fleet of Dragon-class ships accelerated into their final positions. This wasn't just an attack. It was a calculated strike to exploit every weakness the Zarnak flagship had. The ships weren't fighting with brute strength. They were fighting with cunning. Ward's heart pounded in her chest as she issued the command, "Mark." In an instant, the Dragon-class ships unleashed a storm of energy. Every ship fired simultaneously, pouring their remaining firepower into the central core of the Leviathan. The energy blasts collided with the flagship's shields, pushing them to their breaking point. The Zarnak fleet tried to retaliate, but their counterattacks were disorganized, a response to the sudden chaos that had erupted around them. The human ships had once again outmaneuvered them, hitting where the Zarnak least expected. A massive explosion rocked the space around the Leviathan as the final strike breached the flagship's command center. The Zarnak flagship shuddered, the core of the ship crumbling under the weight of the combined firepower. It was a massive, blinding detonation, like a star being born in the heart of the void. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then the comms crackled to life. "The Leviathan is no longer operational," Shaw announced, a note of disbelief in her voice. We've done it. The flagship is down." But even as Ward allowed herself a brief sigh of relief, she knew better than to celebrate. The Zarnak fleet had not been fully broken, and there was still the matter of their reinforcements arriving at full force. The explosion of the Leviathan had not ended the war. It had only fueled the Zarnak's fury. This was far from a victory. The battle continued, and Earth's fleet found itself facing yet another challenge. As the remnants of the Leviathan drifted into the void, the remaining Zarnak ships began a coordinated retreat, but they were not finished. The tide of the war had shifted, but there was no room for complacency. Ward stood at the command console, her eyes scanning the battlefield. "Prepare for the next wave," she ordered, knowing that the Zarnak would return. And when they did, they would come harder and faster. Earth had gained a temporary upper hand, but the war was far from over. In the distance, the next storm was already on the horizon. And this time, the Zarnak were bringing everything they had. The shattered remnants of the Leviathan drifted eerily through space, its colossal frame now nothing more than a graveyard of twisted metal and decaying technology. The destruction of the Zarnak flagship had shaken the invaders, but Ward knew it would only be a matter of time before they struck back with renewed fury. Earth's fleet, battered but unbroken, had gained a temporary reprieve, but the real test was yet to come. The Wrath of Gaia was still operational, but barely. Its once mighty engines hummed weakly, its hull scarred by the unrelenting assault. The ship had survived, but at a cost. Ward stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the display as the last of the Zarnak forces retreated, their formation scattering in the wake of their flagship's destruction. "Commander," Shaw said, breaking the silence, "we've received word from the other Dragon-class ships. We've inflicted significant damage to the Zarnak fleet, but their reinforcements are still en route. We can't hold them off forever with the current fleet strength." Ward clenched her jaw. The situation was dire. The Zarnak weren't just retreating. They were regrouping, calling for reinforcements from the deepest reaches of the galaxy. Their relentless pursuit of dominance was unwavering, and Earth's victory had only served to enrage them. "What's our status on repairs?" Ward asked, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "We're patching up the major damage, but we're running low on resources," Shaw replied. "We need to return to Earth for full repairs, or we'll risk losing the fleet altogether." Ward knew that the risks were enormous. Earth's defenses had been pushed to their limits, and the Zarnak weren't known for showing mercy. Every minute spent in open space was another minute the Zarnak could use to strike back with overwhelming force. But there was no other option. Earth's fleet needed time to regroup and repair, or the consequences would be catastrophic. "Set a course for Earth," Ward ordered, her mind racing. "But we won't return empty-handed. We need to gather intelligence on the Zarnak reinforcements. We can't afford to be blindsided again." The fleet began its journey home, moving cautiously through the vast emptiness of space. Ward's mind never stopped working, even as the ship's hull groaned in protest against the strain. The Zarnak were not just an enemy, they were a force of nature, and Earth had only scratched the surface of their true strength. As the Wrath of Gaia and its fleet of Dragon-class ships made their way back toward Earth, Ward found herself haunted by questions that had no answers. What had driven the Zarnak to launch such a brutal invasion of Earth in the first place? And what did they hope to gain by conquering the human race? These questions gnawed at her, But there was no time for contemplation. The war was far from over. The fleet reached Earth's orbit, and the moment they entered the planet's protective atmosphere, the comms were flooded with reports from command centers worldwide. Earth's forces, scattered and weakened, had managed to defend their home, but the situation was tenuous. The Zarnak were not just attacking Earth. They were methodically eradicating the human race from the galaxy, one system at a time. The Dragon-class ships were Earth's only hope, but the war had taken a toll on every ship, every crew member, and every officer. They needed time, they needed resources, and most of all, they needed new intelligence on the Zarnak. Ward's mind focused on the task at hand. They couldn't afford to rest, not yet. The Zarnak were already regrouping. Just as Ward was about to issue new orders, a transmission broke through the static on the comms. It was a message from an unknown source, someone with intimate knowledge of the Zarnak. "Commander Ward," the voice crackled through the static. "I have information you'll need. The Zarnak are not just a military force. They're an empire. They've been conquering systems for centuries, and they won't stop with Earth. If you want to end this war, you need to understand the Zarnak from the inside." The transmission cut off as abruptly as it had started, leaving Ward stunned. Her thoughts raced as she processed the cryptic message. The Zarnak were more than a threat. They were a far-reaching, brutal empire with a goal that extended beyond Earth. They were a force that had been devouring the galaxy for centuries. "We need to find that source," Ward muttered under her breath, determination hardening her voice. "We can't stop them if we don't understand them." The race against time had just begun. Earth's fleet had barely survived the first wave, but now they had to find a way to strike back, not just with brute force, but with knowledge, with understanding. The fate of humanity rested not only on their ability to fight, but on their ability to adapt faster than their enemy. The Zarnak had underestimated humanity once. The next time, they wouldn't be so lucky. Earth's dragons were about to awaken, and this time, they would take the fight straight to the heart of the Zarnak Empire. The message had come from nowhere, a fleeting whisper in the vast emptiness of space, and Commander Ward knew it was a gift, or perhaps a trap. The Zarnak weren't the type to leave messages that easily, especially not to their enemies. Yet this mysterious transmission had hinted at something that could shift the tide of the war. A weakness, a glimpse into the heart of the Zarnak Empire itself. "We're not wasting time," Ward declared as the transmission ended. "Track down the source of that message. I want every possible lead checked. If there's a way to learn about the Zarnak's inner workings, we're taking it." Her officers scrambled to work. Lieutenant Shaw's fingers flew over the controls, trying to trace the faint signature left by the message. Ward could see the stress on Shaw's face. This was a dangerous game, and any mistake could bring the Zarnak's full wrath crashing down upon them. Meanwhile, across the bridge, the crew of the Wrath of Gaia was quiet, their faces a mixture of determination and exhaustion. They'd survived the attack on the Leviathan, but Ward could see the weight of the battle in their eyes. The victory had cost them. Many of their fleet members were down for repairs, and even the Dragon-class ships weren't immune to the toll of constant combat. "The message's origin is unsettling," Shaw reported, eyes scanning the console. "It's coming from within Zarnak-controlled territory, near the Vorath system. But we've got a problem. It's heavily encrypted, and there's no guarantee it's even safe to decode it." Ward paced across the bridge, her mind sharp. The Vorath system was one of the furthest systems within Zarnak-controlled space, a place the human fleet had no hope of reaching without drawing the attention of the entire Zarnak armada. To risk sending a reconnaissance mission there was borderline suicidal. But the alternative? The Zarnak would continue to push forward, unstoppable, until Earth was nothing but ash. "We don't have a choice," Ward replied. "We need to know what's coming next. Whatever this source has, it might be the key to ending this war." After a tense moment of silence, Shaw nodded. "I'll reroute the fleet's coordinates. We'll need to be stealthy, and we'll need backup." The fleet set off for the Vorath system, their movements as subtle as possible to avoid detection. Ward watched the stars stretch and blur outside the viewport, the familiar hum of the wrath of Gaia beneath her feet. She couldn't shake the feeling that this mission was different. This was the point of no return. The Zarnak were everywhere, and every second they spent out of Earth's orbit made them more vulnerable to retaliation. Days passed in near silence as the fleet ventured deep into enemy territory. The distance to the Vorith system was vast, and the tension on board was palpable. Each ship moved in perfect formation, utilizing every bit of stealth they had to avoid detection by Zarnak scouts. The crew worked in complete harmony, understanding that their very survival depended on their ability to remain undetected. As they approached the Vorith system, Ward's mind raced. The Zarnak were always one step ahead, always adapting. But they had to be wrong about one thing. They had underestimated humanity's resilience, their ingenuity, and their ability to fight. The Wrath of Gaia wasn't just another ship. It was a weapon built to adapt, and its crew had proven time and again they could turn the tide when all seemed lost. Shaw turned toward Ward as the fleet neared the outer rim of the Vorith system. "We're almost in position. We'll have to move quickly once we drop out of hyperspace. If we stay too long, we'll be caught." Ward nodded sharply. "We're not staying long. Get the decoders ready, and I want full scans of the area. We're finding that signal. And then we're getting out." The moment of truth arrived as the fleet dropped out of hyperspace, slipping into the darkness of the system with barely a whisper. The stars above them were cold, distant, and the silence was oppressive. No Zarnak ships were visible, yet Ward knew that was only temporary. The real challenge was ahead. The crew's focus intensified as Shaw activated the fleet's sensor systems, each ship scanning the vast expanse of the Vorith system. After what felt like an eternity, Shaw's voice broke the silence. "I got something," she said, voice tight. "A hidden transmission. The signal is emanating from a derelict station near the fourth planet. We're not the only ones interested in this system." Ward's pulse quickened. "Deploy the recon team. I'll be there in person." The Wrath of Gaia approached the derelict station slowly, cautiously. The structure was a ghost, once a vital part of the Zarnak infrastructure, now abandoned and in ruins. As the team disembarked to explore, Ward couldn't shake the feeling that this was a trap, that the Zarnak were waiting for them to make a mistake. But the truth was, they had no choice. There was something important here, something that could turn the war in humanity's favor. Stepping into the abandoned station, Ward's heart raced. What she would find here would determine whether humanity had a chance to survive the coming storm, or if they would become the next casualty of the Zarnak's unstoppable march. The truth was waiting in the shadows. The derelict station was eerily silent, its once advanced systems now nothing more than decaying husks. The dim lights flickered weakly overhead as Commander Ward and her team navigated the narrow hallways, their footsteps echoing in the cold emptiness. Every inch of the station reeked of abandonment, but Ward's instincts told her that something was hidden here, something far more dangerous than simple technological decay. "Stay sharp," Ward murmured, her voice low but commanding. "We don't know what we're walking into." Lieutenant Shaw, her trusted officer, was at the forefront, scanning every inch of their surroundings. "There's definitely something here. The signal's coming from deep within the station's core," Shaw said, her tone tense. "But the architecture is unfamiliar. It's like a mix of Zarnak and something else." Ward's curiosity deepened. She had expected a Zarnak outpost, a simple military stronghold. Yet this was different. There was a hidden history here, something more than just the enemy's presence. Her thoughts were interrupted as they reached the central chamber of the station, a vast room filled with dormant machinery, overgrown with strange alien vines and fungi. In the center of the chamber stood a large terminal, flickering with a weak blue light. It was still active, but barely. Ward stepped forward, motioning for her team to fall back as she approached the console. Her fingers hovered over the interface. Then she keyed in the command to decrypt the station's logs. The system buzzed to life with a few beeps and clicks, and a series of holographic data streams began to project into the air. "What is this?" Shaw asked, peering over Ward's shoulder. "This isn't just Zarnak tech," Ward said, her voice tinged with awe and realization. "This is something far older." The data streams shifted, revealing what looked like a map of the galaxy, of multiple galaxies, and each one marked with glowing red beacons. Ward's pulse quickened as the pieces began to fall into place. "This station wasn't built by the Zarnak," Ward whispered, her mind racing. "It was a command hub, an observation post for an ancient force, one that's been watching the galaxy for eons." The screen shifted again, showing a video feed. The image was grainy, but clear enough. A massive, towering figure appeared on the screen, an alien race unlike anything Ward had ever seen. Their bodies were long and serpentine, covered in shimmering scales, their eyes glinting with intelligence and malice. The voice accompanying the footage was distorted, but the words were unmistakable. "We are the Kithal. The Zarnak are our servants, bound by ancient oaths. Their mission: to weaken the galaxy, one system at a time, until it is ripe for the true rulers of this universe, the Kithal." Ward's heart froze. The Zarnak, it seemed, were not the true masterminds of this invasion. They were pawns, tools used by a far more ancient and terrifying force. The Kthal were the true enemy. And the Zarnak, in their arrogance, had begun to believe they could overthrow their masters. "No," Ward muttered. "This can't be real." But it was. The Zarnak had been acting on orders. And now, it seemed that they were in danger of being replaced by the Kethal themselves. The ancient empire, which had been pulling the strings from the shadows, was finally revealing itself. Shaw's voice broke through Ward's daze. "Commander, we need to get back to the fleet. The Kethal may be behind this, but the Zarnak still want to destroy Earth. We can't afford to waste time. We have to act before they bring the full force of the Kethal down on us." Ward's mind snapped back into focus. Shaw was right. The Zarnak, once the immediate threat, were now part of a larger, far more insidious plan. One that could involve entire galaxies being crushed under the weight of the Kethal's rule. And Earth, having survived the initial onslaught, was now standing in the way of a cosmic takeover. "We've learned enough," Ward said, her voice hard with resolve. "We get back to the fleet and prepare for what's next. Earth might be the last line of defense, but the war isn't just about Earth anymore. It's about the future of the entire galaxy." The crew quickly retreated from the station, the discovery weighing heavily on their minds. As they returned to the wrath of Gaia and the rest of the fleet, Ward knew that their next mission would be one unlike any they had faced before. The Zarnak, though dangerous, were not the true rulers of the galaxy, and Earth's dragons, humanity's fleet, would have to confront this new, even more terrifying enemy. The stakes had been raised. The Kethal were coming, and this time, humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the future of everything they had ever known. Ward stood on the bridge of the wrath of Gaia, staring out into the vastness of space. The horizon was dark, filled with uncertainty, but there was no fear in her eyes. The fight had only just begun, and Earth's dragons were ready. The galaxy had underestimated humanity before. Now, the galaxy would feel the wrath of Earth's dragons,